Good morning. Welcome to another Teams Tuesday. I will be your host this week, Matt Roncheto. Um, just as a reminder, if you haven't seen this or you're just kind of wondering what Teams Tuesday is, we're going to try to every Tuesday speak to kind of digestible chunks of Teams areas. There'll be a little bit of a rotation on certain topics, but looking forward to speaking to today's topic, which is around the security and governance of Teams. Just a little bit about the format. So yes, we'll go ahead and do the intro, talk about what's new in Teams with a focus on kind of the weekly content there. But we'll touch on a couple of big topics if we feel like they need to be repeated. Go through some of the questions and answers that have been submitted and the answers that we can put to them. And then just a little bit of a call to action, what you can do if you'd like to learn more. So a little bit about me and eGroup. eGroup has been around for about 20 plus years now. Started in the data center space and obviously has built a very big partnership with players like Microsoft in both the Azure and the modern workplace services. About me, I've been with eGroup now about 2 years. Before that, I was with an organization, grew up in a development role and then became director of IT. So familiar with, internal customer collaboration, both kind of avenues, internal services and customer facing services. So can really speak to if you're looking to optimize in within your organization or pushing out to your customers. And then there's just some of the certifications. Obviously, Microsoft is pushing those. Very helpful if you're ever kind of looking to test your knowledge. And then do have some green belt experience with Six Sigma and kind of process optimization. So what's new in Teams this week? There wasn't any deployment actually this week. One of the things I like to say about all of the Microsoft cloud services is they definitely move at the speed of cloud. No deployment this week to speak to. Last week did give us a real-time status and presence update. Just a push towards really getting, if you've ever seen that presence field that might show you as green or away. Right now it shows me as focus because I use focus time to kind of block my timeout, or do not disturb. Those are all presence settings that you can do and set yourself or let your calendar push those out. Really valuable. You'll see it in things like the call center or just trying to collaborate with your peers. I can look and see my other coworkers if they're available or not, and text accordingly. And if I have a do not disturb or a focused on, if they instant message me, it won't pop up and you guys won't see it. One thing I wanted to call out, we typically don't go, too forward facing because there's a lot of roadmap items, but one thing that is slated to start in September and end in September that I thought was pretty cool is the ability to spotlight a video participant for all attendees. Just a reminder, you can customize and pin content or video in your own team session. Those are not universal. And so this would be the first ability to kind of pin a focused speaker or a focused piece of content for your users so that, they're not seeing somebody talk in a small box. And then one that I thought we announced the last couple of weeks, but I wanted to just reiterate, Internet Explorer support for Teams will be going away. So I think that's a pretty big one. Just make sure that that's on your roadmap. We get a lot of questions about, what browsers are supported and making sure stuff can get out there. As IE 11 starts to become less and less used, there's that push to move to one of the Edge browsers or obviously Chrome, Safari, some of the other ones you know of. All right, so we'll get into questions. This was kind of a short and sweet one that came in, and I'm going to take it in a couple parts. But what would you like to know about Teams? They said O365 email security, licensing, and setup. So those are three pretty big topics, and wanted to kind of tackle them one at a time. So first, licensing. So, as the saying goes, there's no I in Teams. Teams is not a standalone product, and you can't get a license that's just for Teams. Really, the top line thing I would say is if you're looking to get Teams, any of the productivity SKUs in the Microsoft space will include Teams. That includes Office 365 kind of branch, E1 being the smallest kind of web only, E3 being in kind of that middle sweet spot, and then E5 being everything, phone system included, things of that nature. Microsoft 365 has come out, so that's going to be everything that's in that Office suite, but also some of the security and Windows 10 features. So similar levels there. F3, denoting frontline worker, so kind of the web only. E3, which is again that sweet spot, and E5, which kind of includes everything, and then all of the small business SKUs. So those are named a little bit differently, but they would all include Teams. And really what I wanted to call out is even if you were looking to do a Teams demo, I just want to see Teams in my enterprise. There's this concept of a Teams exploratory license. You can get that through us. You can get that through Microsoft. But I just wanted to highlight what that includes and really speak to the collaboration hub of Teams. It includes Teams, but how would I send messages and at times retain messages? We'll get into that. Well, some of that is an Exchange. How would I store documents? SharePoint. How would I interact with those documents? Office. And the list goes on. So I really just wanted to call out that even an exploratory license includes a tremendous amount of functionality at kind of their base levels, because Teams is really looked at as bringing all of those things together in a hub for your collaboration, not just a meeting platform, not just an IM platform. So that kind of covers the licensing around Teams. Now we talked about how would I deploy. And really the thing I wanted to call out was we used to flash this up and show kind of the data center linear journey, if you will, and then the cloud journey. Both started with Azure Active Directory or Active Directory. Obviously you probably got Exchange, and if you were moving to cloud, you probably went Exchange first, but you kind of moved down this line. What we've seen with COVID is that doesn't work anymore. And so now kind of how we look at this is you have to have that foundational identity and access management component. So typically that's through something like an AD Connect. So you're probably coming from a domain that's on premise in the data center. You've got to connect that to your cloud identities. But then we're seeing folks jump right to Teams, sending that out organically and really enhancing their collaboration services. Obviously, Exchange is probably the one that's right there. You do get some functionality, and you want kind of Teams and Exchange calendaring and ability to kind of toggle back and forth to be there. But we see quite a few folks that are working through the Exchange Online upgrade, and they've deployed Teams because their users are kind of demanding it. Really, the other big thing I would say is that Skype for Business, Teams is not Skype for Business. If you guys have any familiarity with Teams, you kind of understand that. And so again, there's a little bit more of a pull for Teams versus us kind of in IT pushing that out. So really good service kind of structure, and we're seeing good uptake. The users kind of request that, and COVID has only accelerated that need for remote services. And I wanted to hit on this one because I feel like security, how would I secure those things? There was another question that came in that I feel like is right in the same ballpark. And I think it's a good one. What's the best place to set team security? Is it within Teams, O365 overall, Azure AD, or is it a combination? And it really is a combination. So I just throw this slide up, bit of an eye chart, but really the top line thing I would come away with is the security portal in the Microsoft suite is enterprise wide, and kind of the app specifics are not. And I feel like that is a compelling selling point for the platform. Things like I've got two on the right side here. This really resonates with security-minded folks. You know, if you've got a email protection or a DLP protection for your email only, notice that there's just some sliders there where you say, well, maybe I want to do a label. Maybe I want to do a DLP policy. I literally can turn those things on and have that active in SharePoint and OneDrive and Exchange and Teams. So additionally, if I wanted to retain things, just showed kind of a different slide. If I wanted to set a 1-year retention policy, notice that I'm setting up the retention policy here. That very next kind of step in the chain is choose my locations. You'd get the same ability to use sliders to turn on the same retention policies for email that I might want in SharePoint or OneDrive, or turn them off if you have a different retention policy in those different services. If we move to the left, what I've got here is just kind of an example. This actually comes with the Office 365 platform. Is this concept of conditional access. So if I wanted to roll out Exchange online and have access to email, but I didn't really want you to have access to Teams just yet, or SharePoint because the documents or something of that nature, I can actually shut down cloud applications fully. I can also say, well, if you're on net, you can go right in. I trust that you got into the building kind of appropriately. If you're off net or on the internet or on a library device, maybe I'm going to force MFA. Maybe I'm going to force you to stay within the browser and not download anything. These are all settings within that conditional access engine that are available. So when you get into well, what are some app specifics? That's when you'd have governance and security policies that are really focused on Teams. A Teams voice one that comes up is, I'm not going to allow a user to make international phone calls or have a dial plan at all. Those are things that really are not enterprise-wide, and so you'd have to go into the Teams administration to set those things up. But yeah, definitely a holistic view of security. Things like DLP, they're not just team specific, and you'd want to get a good feel for what you're going to do across the entire portfolio. So how do you search a user's chat history in Teams? So we've talked about retention or destruction based on where your legal department stands. I've seen folks that want to destroy everything ASAP so it can't be discovered. I've seen organizations that want to save it forever so it could be discovered. We're not going to get too much into that conversation, but let's assume that you haven't destroyed it through a retention destruction policy. Obviously, if you're looking within, if you have access to that team or chat, you can go within Teams and just do a search. That's not really a legal discovery type thing. That's just, hey, somebody shared a document and I want to go find it or look up a word. But let's say I don't have access. Let's say I'm the legal department. Let's say there's some kind of litigation. That's where you would look to your e-discovery functionality. And you'd want to try to look for keywords, search for things like, I want to see all of a user's history. There is this concept of a legal hold, so understand that that's out there too. So if you're not familiar with it, in-place hold or legal hold, those things can be done so that even if a user deletes content, they don't want someone to see, deletes it out of their mailbox, deletes it out of their inbox, there's a copy of that is still e-discoverable, as they say. So if you kind of look at these areas, the same thing we say about Teams being this collaboration hub really applies to e-discovery as well. These things are not stored in just one place. There's not this, ginormous Teams database. So if you think about, I'm looking at Teams, but I'm really looking at O365 services because I want to see documents that were shared. I want to see emails that were passed. I want to see OneDrive and SharePoint documents. Each one of those things are looked at in a different system and stored in kind of their system of truth, if you will. And you're going to be able to kind of filter that on an e-discovery request. That's going to run kind of in the background, and then it's going to display the results to you. Those are exportable. If a lawyer or legal team has asked you for an export of that, it's going to gather that information, send them out for further offline kind of discovery. But just a good precursor to any of those conversations. If you need to get deeper, that's where I would say let's schedule something specifically with you or your organization about e-discovery and kind of what's available when and how you could do that. Can I create a template for like project teams, right? So I've got similar things. I've had questions where we use our teams a lot for project teams. And say I get really good, I kind of customize a particular team and the channels that are underneath it for project delivery. And now I just want to rinse and repeat. Well, you do have that ability to just create from the UI. So if I have project A, I can say I want to create a not a template, but a copy of project A, and I'm going to call that project B's team. And it's going to spin up exactly like that. There is ways to do this stuff on the back end. One thing, just a overarching, tenet we say is a lot of these things are available even more so on in PowerShell and via API. So if you can do it from the UI, there is a PowerShell option there. So if you're thinking about, well, I want to do these things and maybe I want to have a request form or some kind of automation that spins up many projects or many teams, that's where scripting may come in. But just from the UI, you do have that ability to, if you really liked a project, and its team or department for that matter, team, you can just use that from the UI and pull that up. Notice it kind of gives you that, hey, we're going to copy these things over, apps, settings, channels. Your existing team won't be changed. So in my example, project A is still going to sit there as a team, and now you'll have the new project B that is out there. One question that really comes into play, we get this asked a lot, should I allow my users to create teams or restrict that? And, I like to say that I would be as frictionless as possible. I know as we have conversations with larger organizations, there is a worry about team sprawl, and it's a real worry. We typically have conversations about naming conventions, about forcing those. You don't want a bunch of people to create teams that are called finance and finance and finance. And so you're kind of not understanding what's my real finance department, email address that I can talk to, and what is finance or finance to. So you definitely don't want that type of stuff. But in general, especially when you're starting out, the more friction you put up, the more, IT barriers, hey, you need to request that and I will bless it and then create it. That introduces lag, it introduces some friction, and users might look for alternatives. So we definitely want to err on the side of, hey, try to imagine a world 6 months from now where you're going to be. And if you feel like, hey, this isn't going to get out of hand too fast, I do think allowing teams to create their groups, self-forming groups is important. And I kind of show this just as a backstop, right? So if you're hearing me and saying, well, Matt, I'm just super freaked out, people are going to create teams, it's going to get out of hand quickly. Just know that there are ways to restrict this. One of the things that just kind of came out here, obviously within the Teams administration, again, this is a Teams governance setting, you do have the ability to kind of limit this, but you also have this ability to integrate with your Azure Active Directory groups. So in this example, and again, we can send it along if you want to, you don't have to read through it, but all we're doing here is we're saying, hey, I'm going to create a security group out there that can be used in just my regular provisioning, workflows that might say Teams group enablement or group creators or whatever. And I'm going to put my, my champions, my semi administrators, folks that I trust with this. So there's plenty of kind of gray area here between I let everybody create groups and no one can create groups. That's kind of how the setting was before. And, they're starting to build some areas where, hey, maybe I have my super users that would fit into a group like this. Again, if you think about team sprawl, that's kind of a bigger topic and certainly one that we want to discuss with larger organizations. It's real. One thing we would say is make sure that the education is up to par, that folks understand channels. So if you think about what a channel can do as a subgrouping, rather than, in my example, having a project team, and I work with project, a company ABC, and I'm on project 1 and project 2 and project 3, maybe those would be better as channels. Again, what a channel can do for a customer or a department is really naturally kind of segment out the conversations. So if you look and you see team sprawl, odds are a lot of those teams will have one channel, general, and all the conversation goes into that. And so if you're not using that hierarchy, in my opinion, you should be. That's an area that I feel like Teams has done a better job than Slack. I feel like Slack has that team sprawl, channel sprawl, because everything's a channel. So when I've been a Slack user, I'm in 15 channels and there's a lot of notifications and they're flying around. There's no real way to aggregate that up to say these are kind of like-minded things. But definitely good conversations. There's a spectrum and good outcomes along that spectrum. So at this point, just wanted to talk about kind of next steps. So whether you've gotten into Teams, gotten your user groups into Teams, or are looking to take the next step, we talk about kind of that enable your users and then maybe extend and enhance as the progression. If you were to call us up and say, hey, I'm just not where I want to be with Teams. My users are screaming stuff, or I just know that maybe we're not optimized for that. Typically, what we want to do is come in and discuss and review those existing services where security and governance is concerned. We want to check your data protection goals, any challenges, anything, again, sometimes Teams is that new communication channel. So you just want to make sure it's protected as much as some of these other platforms you're using. And then we want to kind of review those options with you. What can we do to protect your data at or better than you're doing today? What can we do as your users change what they're up to and how they're collaborating? How can we make sure that stuff is protected? Sometimes, many times Teams is the new guy coming in the door, and so there's a lot of scrutiny. But we'll start to review. Well, can your users send an email to themselves outside of your organization? Is that a threat vector? A place of data leakage? The overall O365 kind of M365 portfolio has the ability to account for some of those things. And so coupled with kind of all of those solutions down to endpoint management, you can really get it, tighten your data protection stance and actually enable your users to use Teams more while having a more secure and collaborative experience. So that's the utopia we want to get to. Definitely, don't want to say it's easy or it's a button check, but let us do that health review with you, see where you're at, see where you need to get to, and then really try to do the gap analysis with you. And with that, I just want to thank everyone for the questions they've submitted. Again, we do this every Tuesday, try to hit on relevant topics. The governance and compliance will be probably a month out. We're trying about a 4-week cadence here, but we'd look to send you some of the other areas that we're touching on, and hope that you attend more of these for all things Teams. Thank you, and have a great Tuesday.